I'm Mia Parker, 32 years old and a freelance attorney, and tonight should have been perfect. The Parker family's Thanksgiving table in our Capitol Hill home in Seattle was set with heirloom china and my mother's famous sage and sausage stuffing. My husband, Tyler Parker, 34, software engineer extraordinaire, sat beside me, palms twitching as he texted under the table. Just as I lifted a forkful of roasted Brussels sprouts, my mom, Linda, 54, flinched, knocking her wine glass into my lap. Red Merlot pooled across my ivory dress as guests murmured. Before I could react, my Uncle Mark, uncle by marriage but always the loose cannon, leaned close to Tyler and hissed, "You sure Mia knows everything about your little side deal?" Heat climbed into my cheeks. Dad, Robert, 56, cleared his throat, tossing me a strained smile. My heart pounded. Why was everyone acting so oddly? And then, as I dabbed at the crimson stain, my mother's voice dropped low, eyes locked on mine. "We've decided." Those 3 words hit me harder than any turkey bone. I grew up in a pale bull Victorian on Capitol Hill, a 4-bedroom house my parents closed on in 2001 for $750,000 0 cents. My dad, Robert Parker, spent his evenings grading AP essays in that home office, surrounded by first edition Hemingways and dog-eared National Geographic maps, tutoring neighborhood students for $80 0 cents an hour on the side. My mom, Linda, taught English at the same high school and ran the drama club on weekends, orchestrating elaborate 4th of July barbecues with rented porta-potties, a jumpy castle for the kids, and steak seared by a local caterer at $45 0 cents per head. Every penny they earned went into a joint brokerage account. They told me it was for college, but I only discovered recently that by the time I graduated, that rainy day fund had swelled past $125,000 0 cents thanks to annual legacy contributions of $10,000 0 cents, $15,000 0 cents. They quietly logged in a hidden ledger. From day one, I felt the weight of first daughter on my shoulders. I was born in 1992. 4 years later, Olivia arrived, forging her path toward medical school in Boston at $60,000 0 cents a year, while I chased a 3.8 GPA at UW and worked 20 hours a week at a downtown law firm for $18 0 cents an hour. I remember my mom bragging to colleagues about her rising star, or even as she served pumpkin cranberry muffins, $25 0 cents worth of ingredients, in our sunroom one summer afternoon after I bombed a calculus exam. "Mia, is this the best you can do?" she'd asked, arms folded, as Dad sat silent beside her. I buried my face in my hands, and Olivia, only 10 years old, squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "You'll get it next time." That was the moment I cemented my role as perfectionist, overachiever, and big sister rolled into one. After passing the bar, I struck out on my own, launching a boutique practice specializing in contract disputes and estate planning. My revenue climbed from $75,000 0 cents in year 1 to a projected $180,000 0 cents this year. When Tyler and I bought our Beacon Hill townhouse, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, for $525,000 0 cents, we put down 20% at 3.75% fixed. Each mortgage payment felt like a victory lap. In parallel, Olivia was in Boston, saving lives and closing in on her residency, while I tracked my rising credit score into the mid-780s. Still, I never questioned why Mom's legacy fund had a 0 entry next to Mia legal fees, even though I'd paid thousands in filing costs and retainers. Tyler's family loomed large, too. The Parkers' colonial in Westlake Hills, Austin, was worth $1,200,000, 6 bedrooms, a pool, a professional pizza oven, and immaculate oak floors. His dad, James, a retired Navy commander, wore 2 silver bars on his collar long after he went home to Ellen. a high-end event planner billing $100.00 an hour. At my first Thanksgiving with them in 2018, Ellen gifted me a monogrammed leather planner, $75.00 plus engraving, and asked brightly, "When are we expecting the first grandbaby, Mia?" I laughed it off, a jolt of pressure pricking my Converse-clad feet next to her Valentino loafers. Tyler shrugged later. "They're just excited, but excitement has a way of feeling like obligation." Tyler's younger brother Ryan was the wild card. At 30, he'd drifted from app dev startup to coffee roaster to freelance photographer, never earning more than $50,000 a year. We had a playful rivalry. Who could grill the best burgers, finish a 5K faster, close more business, but last winter I discovered he'd tapped $5,000 from our home equity savings for emergency car repairs. I covered it quietly, but I made a mental note, check why Ryan could withdraw from our joint account without even asking. Over the years, our two families merged into one big machine of affection, expectations, and unspoken financial maneuvering. I'd catch Mom slipping a glance at Dad's text from their financial advisor, redirect the next $15,000 deposit, or see Ellen discreetly paging through Dad's bank statement when she thought no one was looking. We joked about how financial transparency was just a buzzword, but deep down I felt the edges fraying. Earlier this summer, Tyler and I refinanced our townhouse, taking out a $50,000 home equity line at 4.1% for a new kitchen and deck. I was proud of our credit score and the progress we'd made, yet I never paused to wonder whether any of those numbers had been nudged behind the scenes, hidden in a nightstand drawer, or buried in an email draft. Then came the micro twists that made me uneasy. In January, I found a half-burnt page in Mom's nightstand, an annual lactations list showing $20,000, 0 cent $30,000, 0 cent siphoned off for various family emergencies, with no entry for my legal fund. Last month I used Dad's desktop to scan photos and noticed an open draft addressed to Morgan Stanley. Urge. Redirect 5K from Mia and Tyler, and 2 weeks ago I overheard Ellen whisper to Olivia at dinner, "You know Mia's not really a Parker until she contributes $200, 0 cents K over 5 years, right?" Olivia's fork hovered midair, her eyes wide with mortification. All those undercurrents, hidden ledgers, unsent emails, whispered quotas simmered at every holiday toast and anniversary celebration. I chalked it up to family quirks and kept moving forward. But as I sat at Thanksgiving, with red wine spreading across my dress and Uncle Mark's whisper still ringing in my ears, I realized those quirks were on the brink of becoming a full-blown reckoning, one that would redefine what family really meant to me. The morning after that fateful Thanksgiving dinner, I woke to a ping from my phone at 6:42 a.m. It was an email notification from Julian Marks, a former colleague of Tyler's at Nimbus Tech. The subject line read, "Read, quick question," and the preview said, "Are you sure Mia knows everything about your finances?" My heart skipped. I rolled out of bed and scrolled through the message. Julian was asking Tyler if I'd seen the details of a special project fund Tyler had managed last year, $25,000 0 cents diverted to a consulting gig Julian had set up. Julian warned that the paperwork looks messy and suggested Tyler should be transparent before the holidays. I shoved my phone into the duvet and blinked at the ceiling. Had Tyler hidden something from me? It felt impossible. Our partnership ran on honesty, or so I'd thought. I rubbed sleep from my eyes and swung my legs to the floor, turning toward the bedroom door. My gaze settled on the leather-bound planner Ellen had given me, the one she monogrammed with my initials. The pages felt heavy in my hand as I flipped to the monthly spread where my own entries ended mid-November. I'd overwritten Tyler's neat script with appointments and deadlines, but never paused to update the project fund details. Over my first cup of drip coffee in our Beacon Hill kitchen, I tried to shake it off. I told myself Julian's email could be a misunderstanding, maybe an old invoice slipped through, but then my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my mother-in-law. "Tyler, can you call me?" The sender name said Mom, but a stray glance at the number confirmed it was Ellen. The timestamp was 2:07 a.m. 5 hours before. My breath caught. I hadn't heard her voice that early since our wedding week. Why would she reach out in the middle of the night? I found Tyler asleep on his side, face glowing in the morning light. I shook him gently. "Tyler, you got a weird email from Julian and a 2 a.m. text from your mom." His eyes snapped open, confusion flitting across them. He ran a hand through his hair, muttered, "That's strange," and rolled over. He mumbled something about troubleshooting a server issue and went back to sleep. His reaction only heightened my unease. I decided to dig deeper. After my second cup of coffee, and mentally bracing myself, I approached our home office and opened Tyler's MacBook. I hesitated a fraction of a second before tapping in the passcode, something I'd memorized long ago. In the inbox there it was, the email thread between Julian and Tyler. Scrolling up, I saw references to a wire transfer of $25,000, 0 cents to Parker Legal Holdings, a shell company Julian had used to route consulting fees. The email from Julian warned that the transfer had been flagged as non-compliant by Nimbus Tech's finance department. I closed the lid too fast. My pulse pounded as guilt and betrayal surged. Part of me screamed that I had no right to snoop. Another part felt vindicated by the shards of doubt I'd harbored ever since Thanksgiving. I placed the laptop back on the desk and backed away, my head spinning with questions. Why hadn't Tyler told me? What had he used that money for? And how many other side deals were hidden in plain sight? That afternoon I made an excuse to leave work early. My assistant called in sick and I needed to cover a last-minute deposition prep. Instead, I drove alone to Lake Union and parked by the water. I'd always found clarity in long walks along the shore. The water was gray and still, reflecting my mood. I dialed Ryan's number, my brother-in-law who I'd always trusted as the level-headed one. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a terse message. "Ryan, need to talk ASAP about Tyler's finances. Call me." Half an hour later, as I was texting Olivia about Thanksgiving plans, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification from my mother. My chest tightened. I held my breath as I pressed play. Mom's voice was clipped, defensive. "Mia, I know you saw the ledger. That was for emergency family expenses. Tyler's project was off the books. He asked me to help. Don't overthink it." The words felt like a slap. My mother, who'd always championed transparency, was now asking me to ignore a glaring omission. Back in the car, I let the engine run. I stared at the dashboard until my vision blurred. I pictured the emergency fund ledger in Mom's nightstand drawer, the one with yearly allocations up to $30,000, 0 cents but zero beside Mia legal fees. I remembered the quarter-burnt page from January with mysterious scribbles. And now this, a covert transfer of $25,000, 0 cents into a company whose name I'd never heard. My next step was to confront Tyler, but I needed more than guilt and suspicion. I needed concrete proof. I texted Julian, "Please forward me the thread with Tyler, it's important." I waited, jaw clenched, rocking the car lightly. After several agonizing minutes, Julian replied, "On it. Want to clear this up?" I approached the front door of our townhouse at 5 p.m., tired and jittery. Tyler greeted me with a weary smile. "Long day?" he asked, and I forced a nod. Instead of settling in, I went straight to the dining table, opened my laptop, and brought up Julian's forwarded thread. Tyler's eyes widened as he read. He stammered, Mia, I meant to tell you. I wasn't sure how to explain it." He explained that last spring, Nimbus Tech had offered him a side consulting role negotiating contracts for a fintech startup. The $25,000, 0 cents, had been routed through Parker Legal Holdings, an LLC he'd set up years ago for estate planning clients, to simplify tax filings. He said he thought the structure was legitimate, that he'd cleared it with an accountant, but admitted he should have told me. I felt a flicker of relief, but the roots of betrayal ran deep. You used our company name, our bank account, our credit rating, and didn't even loop me in? I asked, voice trembling. He glanced at the floor. I was afraid you'd think I was overstepping. I thought I could handle it myself. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Check your mother's bank statement. She's moved money this week. I looked at Tyler, confusion and hurt warring on my face. He paled. Mia, that was probably one of Mom's business transfers for family emergencies. I shut my laptop with a snap. The room felt smaller, suffocating. The morning's email, the midnight text, Mom's defensive voicemail, Julian's thread, the anonymous tip. They'd woven a web I couldn't ignore. I stood up, gathering my purse. I'm going for a walk, I said, and left Tyler blinking in the doorway. Out on the street, the air was crisp and cool. I walked 7 blocks before stopping at a neighborhood cafe. Over my 3rd espresso of the day, I opened my banking app and navigated to Mom's shared account, something I'd never done before. My breath caught when I saw 3 withdrawals, $5,000 0 cents on Tuesday, $10,000 0 cents on Wednesday, and $7,500 0 cents yesterday. The payee was simply listed as family emergencies, but the dates coincided exactly with my Thanksgiving fallout, Julian's initial email, and Ellen's 2 a.m. text. I stared at the screen until the world tilted beneath me. The first real crack in our family's facade had appeared weeks ago, but these transactions confirmed it. I was operating in the dark, and now every reassurance felt like another fiber in a tapestry of lies. I paid my bill and stepped out into the dusk, resolve hardening. Tomorrow, I decided, I would demand full transparency from Tyler, from my parents, and from Ellen. No amount of fear or guilt would keep me from the truth any longer. The first signs of trouble had been subtle, an email here, a text there, but now they had rippled into something undeniable. As I walked back home, the lights of Beacon Hill twinkled around me, but I saw them differently, as signposts to a reckoning I could no longer avoid. I picked the Brooklyn Cafe on Pike Place Market for our showdown. Mornings here are quiet before the tourist crowds descend, and their almond croissant is unbeatable. I arrived at 10:30, emming, heart drumming in my chest. Tyler slipped in 2 minutes later, cheeks still flushed from yesterday's discovery. We sat at a corner table overlooking Elliott Bay, sunlight flickering on the water like a promise of clarity. I didn't waste time with small talk. As our Americano arrived, $4.25 each, I slid my laptop across the table. I've compiled everything, I said, voice low but steady. I opened a folder labeled Family Truth _15,000 PL. On screen appeared the official-looking Swift message. $15,000, 0 cents, transferred from our joint account on September 15th to Parker Family Trust, a private account I'd never heard of. My finger hovered above the trackpad. Explain this. Tyler's face went pale. He looked like someone caught in headlights. He stammered. Mia, But I cut him off. That was last month. You ran it through a trust we never set up together. It's our money, Tyler. Why didn't you tell me? His throat bobbed. I thought it was a legacy fund. I assumed Mom and Dad were behind it. The world tipped. If he believed my parents were siphoning our money, why hadn't I heard anything? I clicked to the next file. Email _ Julian PG. It showed Julian's warning, your $25.00 K-wire flagged as non-compliant. I pointed to the thread. You funneled consulting fees through Parker Legal Holdings. That's your LLC, not a family trust. And this $15.00 K? What is Parker Family Trust? Before Tyler could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check the audio file in the next folder. My pulse spiked. I minimized the evidence folder, opened family meeting _ audio MP3. A soft click, and then Mom's voice, crisp but tense. If Mia doesn't reinvest in our venture, we'll need to redirect her share. Then Dad. I agree. We can't let her jeopardize the plan. Then Uncle Mark, she's too unpredictable with her legal fees. Better to keep that money under our roof. I swallowed. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was systematic. They'd orchestrated everything behind my back, my own family conspiring to control my resources. My throat tightened as I turned to Tyler. His eyes moistened. Mia. I swear I didn't know, he whispered. They told me it was all above board. I never imagined. He trailed off, shame shadowing his features. I needed confirmation. I tapped open bank statement _ trust PS, scroll locking on transactions. Monthly $5,000 0-cent deposits labeled Patter from July through September. All originating from our account. They took $15.00 K from us in 3 weeks, I said. And you let them? I felt fury surge, part betrayal, part self-reproach for letting this go so long. Tyler's lip trembled. I was overwhelmed. I thought if I didn't mention it, it would all go away. Coffee long cold, I wiped my palm on my jeans and stood. This isn't just about money, Tyler. It's about respect. They treated me like a child, then spun my money into their private agenda. My voice cracked, raw with hurt. He reached out, but I stepped back. At that moment, the cafe door chimed, and in walked my sister-in-law, Jessica Ramirez, my college roommate and lifelong ally. She paused mid-stride when she spotted me, sliding into the booth beside Tyler. Mia? I got your voicemail. Everything okay? Her eyes flicked to the laptop. I exhaled, glad for backup. Not yet, I said. I need you to hear this. I replayed a snippet of the audio. Jessica's face hardened. Did what? She whispered, leaning closer. Tyler glimpsed relief that someone else now knew. I felt a flicker of solidarity, but our truce was cut short when my phone buzzed again, a new text from the same unknown number. Look under table. I glanced down. Taped to the underside was a flash drive labeled truth _ file. I peeled it free, heart hammer. Plugging it into my laptop, a folder appeared. Mom _ bank _ store. I opened the PDF. 3 withdrawals totaling $22,500 0 on the very dates of Tyler's $25 0 K consulting fee and the $15 0 K trust transfers. Payees were family emergencies, but the memos read legacy protection and emergency legal retainer. The memos matched account entries I'd never been told about. I scrolled, stomach knotting. My mother had been redirecting my own funds back into what she called an emergency reserve, to be used without my knowledge. Tears pricked my eyes. This was more than a one-off, it was a pattern of deceit. I slammed the laptop shut. I can't believe this, I whispered. Jessica grabbed my hand. We'll sort it out. Tyler, white as a sheet, swallowed. Mia, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. But sorry felt thin. I closed my laptop, stood and brushed crumbs from my jeans. I need to see them all. Mom, Dad, Ellen, even Ryan. We all need to talk. I grabbed my purse. Tyler rose, following. As we reached the door, Uncle Mark emerged from the back room, smirking. Didn't expect to find you two dissecting family ledgers in my cafe, he drawled. Careful, Mia, dig too deep and you might uncover things you regret. The words stung, but I squared my shoulders. Regret? I echoed. What I regret is letting my own family conspire against me. He chuckled, retreating behind a row of pastry displays. I didn't look back. Outside, the salty bay breeze hit me like a reset. I closed my eyes and inhaled, steadying myself. The mid-morning sun was warm on my face, but I felt cold determination settle in my bones. The major betrayal moment wasn't a single act. It was the unraveling of a chain of deception stretching back years, and now that I'd seen the whole pattern, wire transfers, secret trusts, audio recordings, covert withdrawals, I couldn't unsee it. I turned to Tyler. His eyes were red-rimmed, guilt-laden. We need transparency, I said. No more secrets. We'll go to my parents' house today. We'll demand answers, and I won't leave until they've returned every penny they took without permission. He nodded, voice small. You're right. I'll stand with you. As we walked down the cobblestone Market Street toward home, and the inevitable confrontation, I felt a fierce clarity. Betrayal had broken us open, yes, but it had also shown me who I could rely on, myself, Jessica, and, if Tyler chose, him too. Whatever came next, I now knew the rules of the game, and I was done playing by someone else's. I sank onto the soft cushions of my couch early that evening, the day's revelations still echoing in my mind like a broken record. The glow of the city lights through the window did nothing to warm me. Everything felt unbearably cold. My hands shook as I propped my elbows on my knees and pressed my face into my palms, the taste of tears salty on my lips. The first wave of grief hit like a tidal surge. All those years of holiday hugs, birthday celebrations, even the everyday I love you, they felt so meaningless now. Had every smile been a lie? I recalled my mother's gentle reprimands, my father's proud nods, the way Uncle Mark pretended delight at my accomplishments. Each memory was tainted by the knowledge that behind my back they'd treated my life and my money as a board game to be manipulated. My phone buzzed. Tyler checking in, I assumed, but I couldn't bring myself to look. Instead, I reached for my coffee table drawer and pulled out an old handwritten letter from my grandfather, dated 1998. He'd written about the importance of integrity and trusting your own compass. I unfolded the creased paper and pressed it to my chest, tears seeping through my fingers. His words had sustained me through undergrad finals and bar exams. Now they felt like a lifeline slipping through my grasp. The second wave came as anger. How dare they, my own parents, plan these secret withdrawals? How dare they label my life unpredictable while stealing from me? My heart pounded as I grabbed my laptop and began drafting an email to my parents. I know everything. I want a meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. You will explain every transfer, every audio file, and return the money by end of day. But I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the send button, anxiety coiling in my gut. I deleted the draft, realizing I needed time to steel myself. And exhausted, I finally allowed myself to cry. I curled into a ball on the couch, sobs racking my body, and thought of my sister, Olivia. She'd always been my rock, even when I'd snapped at her for borrowing clothes without asking, or teasing me about my hyper-focus on work. I pulled my phone onto my lap, thumb lingering over her contact. Instead of calling, I typed a brief text. Liv, something terrible happened. Can you FaceTime? And hit send. Within seconds, her face filled the screen. Warm, concerned, and achingly familiar. I saw your message, she whispered. Tell me what's wrong. I opened my mouth, but the words twisted in my throat. Tears rolled down my cheeks again. Mom, Dad, they've been siphoning money from me for years. They set up trusts and redirected my funds without telling me. I watched her eyes widen, the hurt mirrored in her expression. Oh, Mia, she said, her voice cracking. I'm so sorry." She stayed on the line as I cried, offering quiet comfort, grounding me. That night, sleep eluded me. My mind raced through every detail, the ledgers, the audio recordings, the wire transfers. I kept imagining my parents seated at their dining table, whispering about plans and legacy funds, while I thought we were a family built on trust. I realized with a jolt that this betrayal was more than financial. It was the undoing of my identity, the fracturing of my beliefs about love and kinship. By the time dawn approached, I'd resolve hardened in my chest. I would not let this break me. I showered, dressed in workout gear, and laced up my running shoes. Outside, the air was crisp and the streets of Beacon Hill were still quiet. My legs pounded the pavement in steady rhythm, each step a way to outrun the heartbreak that threatened to consume me. The run cleared my head. The pain remained, but it no longer felt insurmountable. Back home, dripping sweat, I sat at my kitchen island and wrote down a plan. I listed the exact amounts: $25,000 0 cents consulting transfer, $15,000 0 cents trust withdrawals, $22,500 0 cents emergency fund charges, and smaller monthly skims adding up to over $80,000 0 cents. Next to each, I noted the evidence: PDF files, audio clips, bank statements. I jotted questions. Why did you exclude me from the trust setup? Who authorized the family emergency withdrawals? When will you reimburse these funds? The list stretched 3 pages long, a roadmap for the confrontation I dreaded and needed in equal measure. I knew I couldn't face them alone. I forwarded the evidence folder to Olivia and Jessica with a short note: "I need you both at 2 p.m. today, no excuses." Olivia replied almost instantly, "On my way. Don't let them gaslight you." Jessica added, "I'll be there too, we've got your back." At 1:45 p.m. I pulled into my parents' driveway. The Victorian felt ominous, its pale gui paint dull under the overcast sky. My heart thudded as I walked to the front door and rang the bell. Inside, I found them in the living room, Linda knitting and Robert reading the newspaper. Their faces broke into forced smiles when they saw me, but Linda's hand trembled on her needles. "Sit down," my mother said, voice clipped. She gestured to the sofa. I took a deep breath and sat, feet apart, shoulders squared. Olivia and Jessica appeared behind me, flanking my sides. My parents stiffened. "I'm here because I discovered several unauthorized withdrawals from my accounts," I began, sliding the first bank statement across the coffee table. $22,500 0 cents in September alone, labeled family emergencies. I also have wire transfers, the $25,000 0 cents consulting fee routed through my LLC without my knowledge, and $15,000 0 cents moved into a trust I wasn't told about. I watched my mother's face pale. My father set down his paper. Linda opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "I have audio from a family meeting where you and Uncle Mark discussed redirecting my money to protect the family legacy. I have emails between Julian and Tyler flagging the non-compliant transfer, and I have the ledgers you hid in your nightstand." My voice trembled, but I pressed on. "This stops now. I want total transparency, I want a full accounting, and I want reimbursement by Friday. After that, I will pursue legal action." Silence fell. Robert cleared his throat. "Mia, we only ever did this to help. You've always been so intense about your work. We thought you wouldn't notice, and we were trying to protect you." His words hung between us, half apology, half excuse. Olivia shook her head. "Protect her? You stole from her." She turned to me. "Mia, you did the right thing." Jessica stood and crossed her arms. "This is abuse of trust, plain and simple." My mother's eyes glistened. "I'm sorry, Mia. I thought I was doing what was best." But "I'm sorry" felt hollow. I nodded curtly. "Sorry isn't enough. I need action." I collected the papers, stood, and looked at them both. I'm giving you until Friday at 5 p.m. to return $80,000 0 cents. After that, I'll see you in court." I turned and walked out, Olivia and Jessica at my heels. My chest ached, but beneath the pain was something new: liberation. The betrayal had shattered my world, but in doing so, it had freed me from the illusions I'd held. As the front door closed behind me, I felt the weight lift just a fraction. Enough to breathe. Enough to know that no matter what came next, I would stand on my own truth. That first light of dawn found me already wide awake, the weight of yesterday's betrayal still settling in my chest. At 5:15 a.m. I slipped out of bed, tapping my alarm off before it could sound. I laced up my Nike Pegasus, my favorite pair, a $120 0-cent investment last year, and stepped into the crisp Beacon Hill air. The streets were silent, and my breath formed little clouds as I began my run toward Lake Union. With each pounding step over the Westlake Bridge, the adrenaline and the cold wind clawed at my nerves until every doubt dulled to a steady rhythm. When I'd logged 2 miles, I slowed to a walk and ducked into Float Espresso for a pick-me-up, an almond milk latte, $4.50, and a warm oatmeal scone, $3.75. I settled at a wrought iron table on the patio overlooking the water. Foggy Elliott Bay stretched out before me like a sheet of pewter. Pulling my laptop from my bag, I reopened the Family Truth evidence folder. The faint hum of early commuters passing by faded as I methodically reviewed each PDF. The $25,000 0 cents consulting fee, misrouted through Parker Legal Holdings. The $15,000 0 cents siphoned into the Parker Family Trust, and the $22,500 0 cents labeled Family Emergencies. The running total climbed over $80,000 0 cents, an absurd sum for secrets and half-truths. I rested my forehead against the screen, then reached for a napkin and scribbled a rough action plan. First, organize the evidence chronologically with dates and dollar amounts. Second, identify my witnesses: Olivia, Jessica, and Julian. Third, draft a formal cease and desist letter demanding restitution by Friday at 5 p.m. Fourth, schedule a consultation with Emma Chen, my law school friend turned attorney. Fifth, secure our financial accounts so no more surprise withdrawals could occur. It felt good to see a roadmap, something tangible to steer me out of this storm. The cafe's email chime startled me. Julian had replied with the original Nimbus Tech email chain, complete with attached screenshots confirming his warning about non-compliant transfers. His note read, "Better late than never. Let me know if you need more." I typed a quick thank you and asked him to keep an eye out for any other relevant correspondence. The sun had climbed higher now, and I could feel my resolve solidifying like concrete in my veins. By 8 a.m. I was back on my feet, clacking down the hill toward Capitol Hill. I paused at Emma Chen's office, a cozy brick storefront with a brass nameplate. My 30-minute consultation fee of $150 0 cents felt like a bargain as Emma leafed through my files. She listened, brow furrowed, then nodded. "You have every right to pursue legal action for conversion of assets," she said. Her tone firm but sympathetic. She outlined a strategy: send a cease and desist letter by noon, demand an $85,000 0 cent settlement including legal fees and interest, and threatened to freeze joint accounts and file suit if they failed to comply. We agreed I'd send her the final drafts and evidence bundle before 10 a.m. On my way home, I swung by Olivia's condo in South Lake Union. She greeted me on the balcony with an iced vanilla latte, $5.10, and a comforting grin. "I'm all in," she said, slipping me her iPad to review the draft letter. Her fresh perspective caught a few typos and suggested tightening the tone, less pleading, more authority. As she spoke, I felt the panic recede, replaced by a quiet confidence that this fight was mine to win. Back at my townhouse, I spread out everything on the kitchen island. Bank statements, wire transfer confirmations, audio transcripts, and email screenshots. Jessica pinged me. She'd picked up almond croissants from the French bakery and would be by in 10. When the doorbell rang, she burst in with her trademark energy, plopping a paper bag on the counter. "Fuel for the fight," she declared, eyes sparkling, over buttery pastry. She offered to arrive early for our family meeting at 2 p.m. "You'll need backup," she said. "Let me be your second witness." By 10:30 a.m. my email was ready. I opened a new message to Mom, Dad, Ellen, and Ryan. Subject: cease and desist, immediate return of funds. Dear Linda, Robert, Ellen, and Ryan, I write to demand the immediate return of $85,000, 0 cents misappropriated from my personal and joint accounts. Enclosed are the full details: bank statements, wire transfers, audio recordings, and email threads. Please confirm in writing by 5 p.m. today that all funds will be returned in full. Failure to comply will result in legal action without further notice. Sincerely, Mia Parker. I attached 12 well-labeled PDFs and hit send. A sense of calm washed over me. No more waiting in the dark, my terms were set. And the clock started ticking. I glanced out the window and spotted a silver sedan parked across the street, license plate obscured by a dusty tag. My pulse ticked up. That was Uncle Mark's car. I hurried outside, snapped a discreet photo, and texted it to Jessica. "Heads up." She shot back, "On it." Turning back toward my desk, I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in days. Recovery Spark wasn't about reclaiming stolen money alone. It was about reclaiming my power, my voice, and my right to be treated with respect. As the morning sun spilled through the blinds, I realized that betrayal had forced me to discover a fiercer, truer version of myself. And for the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt ready to move forward. On my own terms. I arrived at my parents' pale male Victorian exactly at 1:55 p.m., my heart thrumming in my chest but my shoulders held rigid with purpose. Olivia and Jessica fell into step behind me as we climbed the front porch steps and crossed the threshold into a living room that felt suddenly foreign. Linda sat in her favorite armchair, knitting needles clicking nervously. Robert lingered over the Sunday Times crossword. Ellen hovered by the doorway, phone in hand, and Ryan slouched on the sofa, arms folded. They all looked up, surprise and a flicker of apprehension passing across their faces. I set my laptop on the coffee table, its black surface glinting under the afternoon light. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice calm but firm. "This isn't our usual family catch-up." Watching their unease grow, I clicked the trackpad and brought up a slide deck I had prepared. The first slide, titled Timeline of Misappropriation, listed in crisp bullet points the transactions they could no longer deny. The $5,000 0 cents withdrawal in July labeled Family Emergencies, the $7,500 0 cents Legacy Protection transfer in August, the $15,000 0 cents moved into the Parker Family Trust in mid-September, and the $25,000 0 cents consulting fee routed through Parker Legal Holdings in October. With each line I saw their faces pale a little more. I advanced to the next slide. 2 columns of bank statements and wire transfer confirmations. Transaction IDs highlighted like glaring neon signs. Linda's knitting needles stilled in her lap. Robert set down his pen. Even Ryan shifted upright. I paused to let the evidence sink in before I clicked to play an embedded audio clip from the secret family meeting I had recorded in January. My mother's clipped voice echoed in the quiet room. "If Mia doesn't reinvest in our venture, we'll need to redirect her share." Then my father's measured response, "Exactly. She'll never notice until it's too late." Uncle Mark's amused chuckle followed. I hit pause, my gaze sweeping the group. 3 voices, 3 conspirators, I said. This was no accident. Ellen sprang to her feet. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," she snapped, her cheeks flaming. "We chip in whenever needed. We do it to help." Her defensiveness only tightened the knot in my chest. I clicked to the witness statement slide. short, unequivocal quotes from Julian, Olivia, and Jessica, and read aloud Jessica's line. I saw Ellen tell Tyler not to overcomplicate family business after Mia confronted him. Then Olivia's. I have copies of Mom's hidden ledger omitting Mia's legal fund. The room felt claustrophobic under the weight of their own words. I understand why you think you were protecting me, I said, closing the laptop gently. But you treated my life savings like a sandbox, carving out pieces without my knowledge or consent. I stood and walked to the table, placing a crisp printed sheet before each of them. The Family Financial Pact. It was a simple document, 5 articles of accountability and transparency, full access to joint accounts, a consent clause for any withdrawal over $1,000, 0 cents, an annual Thanksgiving review, mandatory arbitration for disputes, and a 5% APR penalty for any future unilateral transfers. My finger traced the bold header, Family Pact. Respect and transparency. I looked into their eyes. If you sign, we move forward together. If you refuse, I will pursue legal action immediately. Silence throbbed in the air. Ryan picked at the sofa fabric. Ellen's phone slipped from her fingers to her lap. Finally, she reached for the pen. Her hand shook as she scanned the terms, then signed. Ryan followed suit without a word, glancing at his mother for guidance. My mother's fingers trembled over her signature, and my father kissed the top corner of the paper before adding his name in careful script. Relief and sorrow tangled in my chest. Relief that they'd chosen accountability, sorrow that it had taken such deception to get here. I slid my laptop shut and exhaled a long breath. Thank you, I said softly, surprising myself at the gentleness underlying my firmness. This isn't punishment, it's a path to rebuilding trust. Olivia stepped forward and put her arm around Mom's shoulders, offering a tentative smile. Jessica gave Dad a small nod of encouragement. Even Ryan's posture softened, as though he too wanted to believe in a new chapter. Just then, Uncle Mark appeared in the doorway, arms crossed and smirking. Well, Mia, looks like you learned to play their game and win, he drawled, his tone half taunt, half admiration. I squared my shoulders and met his gaze without flinching. This isn't a game, I replied. It's my life. And today, I decided to write my own rules. We stepped onto the porch together, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the cobblestones. I inhaled the crisp air, tasting freedom on my tongue. The Family Pact sat secure in my laptop bag, a tangible promise that boundaries would be respected from this point forward. As I hugged Olivia and Jessica goodbye, I felt something shift inside me. I had reclaimed my power, and with it the knowledge that I would never again be treated as collateral in someone else's agenda. Walking back down the street toward my car, I realized that turning the tables had meant more than exposing their misdeeds. It had meant asserting my own worth, demanding dignity from those who claimed to love me, and forging a future on my terms. Betrayal had cracked me open, but in the shards I found clarity. Today the game ended, and I was the author of my next move. I've always felt closest to my grandfather, Joe Parker, whose stories of Thanksgiving in 1965 still shimmer in my mind. Back then he'd been a young Navy lieutenant newly stationed on the East Coast, homesick and far from the comforts of his own family's kitchen. One chilly November evening he was invited to a neighbor's modest 3-bedroom Cape Cod home in Newport, Rhode Island. They fed him steaming bowls of clam chowder for $0, 25 cents a bowl, and homemade pumpkin pie for 10 cents a slice. There was no heirloom china or fancy stuffing, just a rickety card table, folding metal chairs, and a mismatched set of mason jars brimming with cranberry relish. Yet Grandpa Joe always said it was the richest Thanksgiving he ever knew. He wrote me a letter about that night, on delicate stationery he'd saved and ended it with a line I keep taped above my desk. Family isn't defined by the walls you share, but by the warmth you give. Over the years, I watched that warmth glow at every Parker family gathering, until it flickered out under the weight of secrecy and ledgers. Remembering Grandpa Joe's words felt like rediscovering a buried compass, pointing me back to what mattered: honesty, kindness, and open heart. Last week, when everything around me was unraveling, I stumbled upon a faded black and white photograph of that very Thanksgiving in Newport. Grandpa Joe sat at the head of the table, young and smiling, flanked by neighbors whose names he'd written on the back in looping script. I traced his face with my finger, imagining the crisp salt air and the laughter echoing off wooden floorboards. In that moment, I realized our family dramas, ledgers, trust funds, broken promises, wouldn't matter 5 decades from now if we lost sight of our humanity. So I tucked the photo into my binder of evidence, knowing it would seem incongruous alongside PDFs and bank statements. But I also included a one-line footnote in my family pact draft that read, "Remember Grandpa Joe's Thanksgiving of 1965. Generosity and transparency are the legacies we choose to leave." When I presented the pact to my family, that note gave them pause. My mother paused mid-signature, her eyes drifting to the photo I'd held up. "I forgot how simple things could be," she whispered, tears brimming. That little twist, a relic from a half-century ago, became a reminder that while we grappled over dollars and documents, the true currency of family was trust and compassion. It shifted the room's energy, from confrontation to reflection, and helped us see that our fight wasn't just about restitution, but about rekindling the warmth Grandpa Joe had known that long ago Thanksgiving. Now, as I sip chamomile tea in my Beacon Hill living room, I can almost hear his voice. "Your legacy isn't in the money you pass down, but in the honesty you pass on." It's a lesson I carry with me, one I plan to honor each Thanksgiving, not by hiding funds in secret ledgers, but by laying every card on the table, just like that humble dinner in Newport so many years ago. In the days following our family meeting, the atmosphere in my parents' household shifted, as if a storm had passed through their Victorian and left the walls shaken. The Parker family trust account was emptied, $15,000 redirected back into our joint account by wire transfer, and Mom and Dad handed me a cashier's check for the $22,500 they'd withdrawn under family emergencies. Ellen texted that same morning to confirm she'd reimbursed Tyler's $25,000 consulting fee and would transfer him an additional $2,500 to cover any tax discrepancies. Ryan even slipped me $500 in cash, an awkward, sheepish apology attached, covering what he'd borrowed from our home equity line. But the true downfall wasn't in the money returned. It was in watching the proud architects of those schemes confront the full weight of their actions. My mother, who once prided herself on her impeccable hosting and drama club flair, seemed inconsolably hollow. I overheard her voice cracking late one night as she called her book club. "I've always taught honesty in class, yet I hide my own daughter's money." The next morning she disappeared from the breakfast table entirely, leaving her beloved sage and sausage stuffing untouched. Dad retreated into his study, his sanctuary of Hemingway first editions and dog-eared atlases, closing the door for hours at a time. When he emerged, he carried a stack of envelopes addressed to former students requesting tutoring and a handwritten note: "I'm recommitting my time to helping others, not hiding funds." He handed me the note after a silent hug, eyes red-rimmed. "This is my penance," he whispered, Aster. I saw in his posture a man stripped of ego, humbled by the breach of trust he'd engineered. Ellen, never one to admit defeat easily, threw herself into community service. She organized a fundraiser for the local youth theater, an event she billed as Transparency in the Arts, charging a $50.00 ticket and donating all proceeds to a nonprofit that offered free drama classes to underserved teens. She even wrote a cheeky blog post titled, "How I Learned to Act Honestly," confessing her mistakes and tagging me as her co-author. The post went viral in our neighborhood Facebook group, and within 48 hours, she'd raised over $8,000, more than enough to cover her legal fee portion, and apologized publicly to her daughter-in-law Mia, whose resilience inspired this event. Ryan's transformation was quieter but no less profound. He enrolled in a financial literacy course at the local community college, $350.00 for 6 weeks, and posted weekly updates on social media with hashtags like "Responsible Brother" and "No More Surprise." He invited Tyler and me to a group discussion where he admitted, voice trembling, "I took from you out of selfishness, not need. I'm sorry, and I promise to never breach your trust again." The sincerity in his eyes convinced me he meant it. Uncle Mark, the loose cannon whose chuckle had once underscored every conspiracy, found himself oddly marginalized. His usual bravado was replaced by brooding silence. One afternoon, as I passed the cafe where he worked part-time, I saw him sitting at a side table, staring at the pastry display he once touted as "my domain." He slid me a note when I ordered. "No voice, just pen on paper. I misjudged. Family isn't just profit. Call me when you're ready." I nodded, ordering my latte. Sometimes a man's downfall is in his own conscience catching up. By week 2 after the pact signing, my parents had moved out of their beloved Victorian. They'd listed it for $750,000, the exact price they'd paid 24 years earlier, and planned to downsize to a modest 2-bedroom condo in Queen Anne. "We want to start fresh," Dad told me over lunch one afternoon at a nearby cafe. "No secret drawers, no hidden account." He sounded weary but resolute. That same weekend I convened a town hall family reunion in our Beacon Hill townhouse, a celebration, I'd announced, of new beginnings. I sent paper invitations printed on ivory cardstock for $25.00 each. My mother, ever the drama tea time enthusiast, insisted they be engraved. Olivia set the table with candles and fall foliage for $75.00 at the florist. Jessica baked pie. Tyler grilled turkey legs on the porch. Even Uncle Mark attended, arriving shyly with a bouquet of daisies instead of his usual leather satchel of schemes. We gathered in the living room, and I stood at the head of the table, looking at faces once fraught with betrayal but now open with tentative warmth. I handed each person a family reflection card, index cards I'd printed for $5.00 at the office supply store, asking them to write one promise for the year ahead. My mother wrote, "I will practice honesty even when it's hard." Dad's read, "I will mentor without hidden agendas." Ellen's promise, "I will share my successes and failures with the ones I love." Ryan's card said, "I will earn trust, not expect it." Uncle Mark's appeared last, "Family over fortune." Tears pricked my eyes as I read each card aloud. In that round, what once felt like a courtroom transmuted into a sanctuary of accountability and hope. I realized then that the antagonist's true downfall wasn't humiliation or legal threat. It was the unraveling of the illusion that they could profit at my expense without consequence. Their reputations had been bruised, but more importantly, they'd recognized the cost of deception, the erosion of love itself. As the sun dipped below the Seattle skyline, we clinked our glasses of cranberry spritzer, $3.00 a bottle, and shared the first genuine laughter in months. The Parker family, flawed as ever, had taken its hardest lesson and, by confronting the fallout, had found a path back to each other. Their downfall was the price they paid to rediscover what Grandpa Joe called the warmth you give, and I knew that while the scars would remain, our reformed bonds were stronger for the trials we'd endured. By mid-November, Seattle's hills were ablaze with amber and crimson leaves, and I found myself welcoming everyone into my Queen Anne townhouse for Thanksgiving. I'd draped autumn garlands across the entryway, set out 2 oak farm tables from Pottery Barn and dressed them in crisp white linen, cinnamon-scented candles, and mason jars overflowing with late-harvest blooms. As the sun dipped over Lake Union, Olivia enveloped me in a hug, whispering, "We made it through, sis." And Tyler slipped a small velvet box into my hand. Inside lay a sterling silver charm bracelet engraved with the word, "Strength," a tangible reminder of every victory and setback we'd faced together. When my parents and Ellen arrived arm in arm, I noticed their eyes glisten with humility rather than expectation. Mom paused beside me and nodded toward our family pact, laughing softly. "You've kept us honest, Mia." That small acknowledgement felt like the warmest gift of all. Before sitting down, I passed around index cards and invited everyone to jot one lesson they'd learned in the past year. I watched as my mother wrote, "Love must be transparent." Dad inscribed humility greater than hidden funds, and Ellen confessed, "Real strength is admitting mistakes." One by one, each family member shared their promise, turning what could have been awkward formalities into an intimate circle of hope. Over roasted turkey and sage and sausage stuffing, we swapped light-hearted stories. Dad's bungled Thanksgiving toast, Ellen's calendar mishap last year, Ryan's first post in his financial literacy group. Laughter replaced the tension I'd felt at our last holiday meal, and I realized how far we'd come. Later, Tyler led me onto the balcony, where he'd hung white bistro lights. The bay below glimmered like scattered diamonds, and he held me close, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." In that embrace, I understood that healing had bled into something stronger than before. As the last guests trickled home and I surveyed the lit kitchen with its stray napkins and half-empty bowls, I thought back to the moment I heard "We've decided" at our previous Thanksgiving table, the pre-dawn runs, the tense negotiations, and the final signatures on our family pact. Each step had been painful, but each had taught me the same truth. Family drama isn't about winning, it's about healing together. Locking the door that night, I breathed in the cool autumn air and felt a profound sense of hope. Disagreements would arise again, life guarantees friction, but now we had a blueprint. Open dialogue, clear boundaries, and unwavering honesty. As the door clicked shut behind me, I carried with me the greatest lesson of all. Transparent love is the legacy worth leaving.